Drop 2 voicings are one of the most powerful tools for comping, chord melody and chord solos, but if you learn them the wrong way, just running endless inversions, you'll never actually use them in your playing, and too often that's how they're taught, which is why so many guitarists never get to experience how Drop 2 opens up for some amazing jazz harmony. One thing many students struggle with when learning Drop 2 voicings is understanding that they are not just inversions. In fact, a Drop 2 voicing still has 4 inversions, just like a regular root position chord. But the process itself is actually quite simple. Let's take this C major 7. To turn this into a Drop 2 voicing, we take the second highest note, so that's the G, and then drop that down an octave. And then you have this. And notice that I'm not labeling this as a C major 7 over G. That's because in jazz, usually these voicings are played with a bass player covering the root. So even though the lowest note that we're playing is in fact a G, then the harmony still functions as a C major 7. Now, the voicing here is spread out over 5 strings, which isn't always ideal. Instead, you can make it more playable by keeping everything on 4 strings. Now the next question is, why is this not just an inversion? And the key difference is the range of the voicing. Our Drop 2 chord spans more than an octave from the low G up to the high B. In contrast, standard 7th chord inversions are always within an octave, like this. And in fact, on guitar, they're completely unplayable and they're so impractical that Guitar Pro can't even fit all of them into diagrams. However, Drop 2 voicings also have their own inversions, and these are not only playable, they also sound fantastic. Now let's talk about learning Drop 2 voicings efficiently, because this is where a lot of people waste way too much time, and I've got a huge shortcut that will make learning them a lot easier. No matter what you're learning, you won't truly internalize it until you can use it in a song. So that's the goal now. You can play Drop 2 voicings on different string sets, but for this video, let's just focus on the top 4 strings and then apply them to the first 8 bars of Autumn Leaves. You only need 4 chord types for this song: minor 7, dominant 7, major 7, and minor 7 flat 5. We'll go through these quickly, but you can always go back in the video or grab the PDF on my website. What really matters isn't just learning the shapes, it's how the chords move and connect in the song. The first chord you need is a minor 7, so here are 4 inversions of C minor 7. Next you have 4 inversions for a dominant F7. And major 7 inversions, in this case B flat major 7. Since E flat major 7 uses the same shapes as B flat major 7 in a different position, you already have these covered. And finally, you need a minor 7 flat 5. So for A half diminished, you have. With these, you have the 4 main chord types covered, and later you will see that they actually cover a lot more. But there's one more chord in Autumn Leaves that we'll handle a little bit differently. First, let's just hear how the chords flow beautifully through the progression, and then I'll explain the G minor 6. The way we get the G minor 6 is by taking a G minor 7, because of course you have minor 7 inversions, so we have this one, locating the flat 7, now that's the F here, and replacing that with a 6, which is this E. And then you get this chord. Do you notice what chord this looks like? Now, knowing where the notes are and what they are against the root of the chord will become a superpower when working with Drop 2. You'll see that return often in this video. At this point, you could start with any C minor 7 inversion and then play the song. I've written those versions out on my website so that you can check them out, but you will learn way more by figuring that out for yourself. And I want to focus on this set in the video. Next, let's look at how to practice Drop 2 efficiently so that you don't waste time memorizing 1,000 different shapes. When learning jazz chords, you don't need to memorize endless inversions. Instead, you can focus on a few simple rules that let you see the same grip as multiple chords and think of different voicings as part of the same thing. The first rule is the 9th replaces the root. This is a C minor 7 Drop 2 voicing, so if we find the root, that's the C on the high E string, you replace that with the D, the 9th, and then you have a C minor 7 with a 9. Now if you look at the C minor 7 9 voicing, do you see that this is in fact also an E flat major 7 voicing? And that means that if you know your major 7 Drop 2 voicings, you also know how to play minor 7 with a 9 voicings. And we can try the same thing with an F7. So here the root is on the B string, and you can replace that with a ninth. Now that's a G, and that gives you this voicing. But hopefully you recognize that F7 with a 9 is in fact the same as an A half diminished. And this is true for the major 7 chords as well. B flat major 7 is this. And if you replace the B flat on the top string with the 9th C, then you have this voicing, which you already know as a D minor 7. Now using and seeing voicings that you already know as other chords opens up a whole new level of flexibility in your voicings and your comping. Let's test this in a 2-5-1 progression in B flat major, and notice that I'm using another rule on the F7 in this example. The C minor 7 and B flat major 7 parts were already clear, but notice that I'm of course also mixing up the voicings. So I'm using a C minor 7 with a 9, but I'm also using the basic C minor 7. Now on the F7, I'm using the rule that the 13th replaces the 5th. Now in this case, that is the D, that's the 13, and that is of course replacing the 5th of the chord, which is C. So we have, this is the basic F7 with a 9, and then I'm also using this version, which is with a 9 and a 13. And you can use this on major 7 chords as well. So for the B flat major 7, that means that we have this B flat major 7 with a 9, and I can use a 13 instead of the 5th. So the 5th is here, that's the F, and I can use the G as well. After that, let's apply these concepts to a minor 2-5-1 progression where things get even more interesting. For basic minor 2-5 in G minor, we could start with these voicings. And here you can add a new rule. The 11th replaces the 3rd. So instead of memorizing more shapes, we can take the A half diminished and convert that into an A half diminished with an 11 by replacing the 3rd C, that's this note, with the 11th D. And then you get this. And you can probably see that the A half diminished with an 11 is in fact the same shape as our F7 with a 9 and a 13. So you are again recycling shapes. With the D7, then you can add a flat 9, which naturally resolves to the G minor. And in this case, that means that we go from this to this. Now this shape actually looks just like an F sharp diminished, or it is an F sharp diminished chord, which is very useful because diminished shapes repeat every 3 frets, giving us these very easy inversions. There are options for adding a 13th as well, but that'll come later. You might remember that the final chord, G minor 6, is in fact identical to an E minor 7 flat 5. And that means that you can use E half diminished inversions to move around the neck for that chord. Now let's apply all of this in a longer 2-5-1 example where the diminished chord helps us move smoothly up the neck. Besides the flat 9 trick on D7, we can also add a flat 13 to create a richer dominant sound. So we want to use the 13 replaces the 5th rule. Now one of the D7 flat 9 voicings from the previous example is this one. And here the 5th is on the B string, that's this A, and replacing that with the flat 13, which is a B flat, will give you this chord. And you may also recognize that as a C half diminished chord, so you can use minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished voicings to play flat 9 or flat 13 chords. Another way to recycle. Here's an example that uses that and adds a 9th to G minor 6, which also gives it a really smooth resolution. When I play this, I'm not thinking of A half diminished or A half diminished with an 11 as separate chords. They are part of the same thing. Likewise, I don't think of D7, flat 9, flat 13 as a C half diminished chord. When I'm using it in that context, it's a D7, not something that I have to translate to a D7. And that's really just a question of practicing and using it. And that's why this approach is so much more practical and flexible than simply memorizing thousands of inversions. Let me show you how much time it saves. A lot of especially jazz beginners waste time trying to memorize every inversion of every chord, but that's not how jazz guitar works in real life. Instead, you should learn a few key inversions and then explore variations while playing music, because that is where you really learn something. The first reason is that it's very efficient that the same chord can be so many things. Look at this A half diminished chord. This is of course an A half diminished, but you will also use it as an F7 with a 9. You can use it as a C minor 6 or as a B7 with a flat 9 and a flat 13. So there's no real need to study those as separate inversions, and you're better off working on using them in chord progressions. The same goes for the minor 7 chord. So you know this is a D minor 7, but you've also seen it used as a B flat major 7 with a 9. You can use it as an F6 or a G7 sus4 with a 9. If you already know one shape, then you've unlocked 4 different harmonic options without any extra practice. Another important reason is that not all inversions are equally useful, mainly because they are impractical to play and the way the notes are placed might not be great for the chord. If you take a listen to this F7, 9, 13 voicing, then this inversion is not a very stable chord. And having the 3rd and the 7th on top of the extensions is not a great sound in most contexts, so you should not spend as much time on this one and instead focus on the one that you're using all the time, like this one. Instead of spending hours drilling every inversion, focus on the ones that sound great in progressions, appear frequently in jazz standards, and are comfortable to play in real comping. Keep it practical. It's fine to check out different inversions, but it is when you apply them to actual music that you really learn something. And that's what we'll do next, starting with some practical comping and then some chord melody. So far, we've covered 3 powerful voicing rules that help you add color and movement to the progressions, adding a 9th, 11th and 13th. But there is one more essential rule that can add beautiful movement and voice leading to your comping. The 6 replaces the 7th. Check out this comping example where I apply this in both a major and a minor context. This approach gives you a natural sense of movement while keeping the voicings easy to play. So here you see how on the B flat major 7, I'm moving from the A down to the G, so 7 down to 6. And also on the G minor 6, I'm moving both the root up to the 9 and the 6 up to the major 7, giving me this minor major 7 with a 9. So you have these rules and they work both ways. 9th instead of root, 11th instead of 3rd, 13th instead of 5th, and 6th instead of 7th. And remember, these ideas aren't only for drop 2 voicings, you can use them in drop 3 or shell voicings as well. Now you can sit down with your guitar and try to apply these 4 rules to your own playing. Experiment with voicings, move notes around and find new sounds that inspire you. And we're just scratching the surface here. Next, let's take drop 2 voicings beyond comping and see how great they are for chord melody. One of the best things about drop 2 voicings is how easily they fit under a melody, allowing you to harmonize lines easily. First, you need to map out the melody on the top strings, and this keeps it clear and gives you space to add chords under it. And then you add chords either on a sustained note or when the chord changes. Using this approach, you get a beautiful and playable harmonization of Autumn Leaves. Drop 2 voicings are great for chord melody, but there are a lot of other things to discover in that entire world of harmony. And this approach fits perfectly with the arranging and reharmonization techniques that I cover in this video, where we start with simple shell voicings and build that into beautiful moving harmonies. Adding chords to a melody is just one of the most fun and creative things that you can do on a guitar, and it's a lot easier than you think. Check it out, learn jazz, make music.